Well, the New South Wales Government has ordered all public sector workers to change their working arrangements so the majority of their time is spent in the office, a move designed to address the broader economic impact of working from home arrangements. Let's get some detail. Joydeep Hor joining us from People and Culture Strategies. Joydeep, good to catch up with you again. So this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? Have you perhaps surprised that it hasn't been brought in sooner?
Yeah, I am a little bit surprised it hasn't been brought in sooner. Good morning, Andrew. It's one of those things. It just keeps on giving, doesn't it? The uncertainty and variability around all things that arose and were crystallised during the pandemic, and of course, working from home and modified working arrangements just continues to be something that. There's just really so much discrepancy across employers, regardless of whether it's public sector, private sector. It is having and continues to have a very significant impact on a lot of businesses who do pay a very heavy price as a result of employers wanting to be seen to be doing the right thing just by their people, but not actually understanding the impact that has on others. So I think this is an important move from how does a state government look after a number of businesses. How it's going to play out will be interesting, as has been the case from the initiation of the working from home arrangements in 2020. There's always going to be a bit of push-pull. I think there's going to be some debates, some individuals who will no doubt want to test the boundaries of what might constitute an exception to complying with this particular rule, and whether this actually acts as an impetus for a lot of employers who, frankly, have been quite scared and timid when it comes to insisting on what their employees can do. So it's an interesting development.
So what's this actually amount to? Does it mean that those government employees must spend, well, at least 2.5 days in the office?
Well, that's right. If you're a full-time employee, it's 2.5 days that you're expected to, or at least 2.5 days that you're expected to spend at the office. Now, how an individual chooses to slice and dice that, of course, will be presumably a matter of discussion that they'll have with their relevant managers and their employer. There are some exceptions, as I understand it, that will be built in largely to reflect individual carers' responsibilities and other things. But what I find interesting about that is that that really should have been the case, and there shouldn't be anything different in relation to that as a result of what's transpired from 2020 onwards. In other words, the law has always regulated what an employer's obligations are when it comes to accommodating requests for caring arrangements, and that's something that's evolved over many years. So I think there's a bit of a disconnect when it comes to that now also being a relevant factor in terms of the compliance with this particular edict. It should almost be something that's treated as completely separate.
So how practically, I guess, how's this likely to work? Because, and I've asked you this question before, in fact, probably since the beginning of the pandemic, in terms of productivity. Do we know whether perhaps if you're working from home, you are less productive?
Yeah, I think that in some industries and in some organisations, you will have a lot more visibility and transparency around productivity data and productivity metrics. It's as simple as that. For example, in professional services, in firms like mine, the members of the legal team, the professional staff are expected to record their time. That's something that can be monitored. If I was so inclined, on a daily basis, a weekly basis, I can do a very clear comparison between the number of hours that are being worked and that are being recorded as billable work, chargeable work, and we're no different to any of the accounting firms, law firms, and numerous other firms in the professional services industry. If you don't have those kinds of metrics in place, then a lot of productivity falls to be determined on whether deadlines are being met, whether you're looking at customer satisfaction, whether you're looking at things like accessibility, and things that naturally have an element to them where there may be, and increasingly is, an expectation on employees that there should be more swings and roundabouts. There should be more credit given to them for working late one particular day, or coming in early, or working through their lunch break, and therefore if they are offline for a little bit of time in the afternoon, that should be taken into account. So productivity and the impact of working from home on productivity, I think, is in many instances a very subjective test, unless you are working in particular sectors where it is very objectively measurable. And of course, you'll have manufacturing and other industries where that productivity is very clearly measurable as well. It's not something that's just confined to professional services. But the productivity is one thing. I think the other question that employers are going to be asking themselves and have been asking themselves is, in circumstances where it's harder and harder to attract and retain staff, we know that the longevity of tenure of employees these days is far lower than what it's ever been. Employers are feeling very reluctant to push the boundaries on things that might have been the subject of a instinctive and intuitive conversation that a manager might have had 10 years ago. If someone's not accessible, not at their desk, the manager might say, well, where were you? I needed you to be there. Now, a manager will think twice or three times before initiating that kind of conversation, because they just don't know what the boundaries of even asking those questions and making those kinds of comments are. I think that's exacerbated enormously as a result of the current working arrangements.
So, Joydeep, what's going on in the private sector then? How much time is being spent in the office, and do employers have the right to mandate a working arrangement?
Yeah, absolutely. Employers do have that right to do that. I mean, this is not a situation where the government has said that the majority of people have to work from home. There's none of that in place at the moment. This is about what an employer considers is necessary in order to do its business. Now, employment contracts for most people will stipulate, in the vast majority of instances, that they have a primary place of work. They may have been modified through policies and practices. The real issue that's happened here is that employers created a rod for their own backs in 2020 and 2021. A lot of employers came out with these broad statements such as, well, from now on, we're letting our staff know, our people know, that they can work from anywhere. We're very comfortable with everyone doing hybrid. We're very comfortable with everyone working from home if they need to. Because at that particular point in time, that was the messaging that employers chose to adopt in order to fit in with what the external environment required of them. So it was trying to sell it as a win and a positive. Now, naturally, when those circumstances changed and employers didn't have to adhere to those kinds of externally imposed requirements, employers are saying, oh, we need everyone to come back now. And the obvious response from employees was, well, hang on a second, 2 months ago or 2 days ago, you were saying that I could work from anywhere, and now you're saying that I have to come back. So this is the issue that employers are facing and are still grappling with at the moment. So there is more debate and more discussion, even though employers do have that right, absolutely. But do the employers have the courage is probably more the question and challenge for them.